so, of course, number one on the list of who the best foreigners to let immigrate were people from England. And then it was people from Wales and people from Scotland, and then some Swedes and Norwegians made it, and then a little bit farther down were the Germans. And so far, the writer was all describing mostly white-skinned, fair people. But then it got into the people of color who were way down farther on the list. The Italians, he said, you couldn't trust the Italians. You couldn't trust the Greeks. You couldn't trust the Turks. At that point, they weren't even thinking about immigration from Mexico. We have a way of ranking each other in the human family. And no matter how open we want to be, we have gut reactions. And so the question is, how do we welcome the foreigners? It's interesting that both in the book of Exodus and the book of Deuteronomy, God says to Israel is now headed toward, they've been freed from slavery in Egypt, and they're headed towards the new land that God gives them, the land of Canaan, the land that will become Israel. And God says to them, when you get into your new land, treat well the foreigners in your midst. Treat well the immigrants in your midst. You see, God says, because remember, you too were once immigrants. You too were once foreigners in the land of Egypt, and how important it was for you to be treated well, or to not be treated well. How many of us come from families that a few generations back at least were once foreigners and immigrants? If you immigrated from somewhere, I see most hands going up. That's good. If you are Native American, you're in a special class there. In one way or the other, we are newcomers to the land, and the question is, how do we, in the spirit of Solomon, praying for the outsiders, how do we welcome the foreigners in our midst? Now, there's another category of foreigners. It doesn't have to do with race or ethnicity. It's how foreign it is when we talk to somebody who has an entirely different opinion about something. We talk to somebody who thinks absolutely the opposite from us on a topic that's near to us. Have you ever been maybe sitting on a plane, and sitting on a seat in an airplane, you strike up a conversation with a person, or you're at the party, you have a nice conversation. Then all of a sudden they say something, they give you their opinion about some social event that you just totally disagree with. And you think to yourself, how can this person even be thinking such a crazy thing like that? And all of a sudden there's kind of a distance, isn't there? All of a sudden the person is a foreigner to us in that moment. I think that very often in our society, we often are moved by a certain sense of generosity and sympathy to people who socially are struggling. So the poor, the unemployed, the new immigrants in our midst, we have a certain sense of sympathy for them. But when we're with someone who we really disagree with, that's almost the hardest situation. And we become foreigners to each other. And so what is Solomon praying for? He's praying that in the community of God's people, that not only would God hear the prayers of those who are different, but that perhaps we would too, that we too in our community. The hardest thing for a community is to live together with a sense of being God's people, even when we disagree with each other on important topics. And so Solomon is sort of modeling for us today that what unifies us is not how we think. A lot of times we do think the same, but finally what unifies us is not what we think or what we do. What unifies us is the grace and love of God. What unifies us is not how good we are, or how bad we are, how smart we are, or how not smart we are. What draws us together, finally, is nothing we do or nothing we have. What unifies us is God's claim on us, revealed through Christ. It's the spirit and love of Christ. That's what makes us a family. Finally, if we're going to talk about foreigners, there's another word of grace that needs to come in, because we often look at parts of ourselves as if they were foreign parts. We have a hard time completely accepting and loving every part of us. What I mean by that, as I've talked before about, we are always our own worst critic. And so as we go through life, there's often some part of us that we just wish that wasn't there, some place in which we struggle, or some skill we're wanting to learn, or some habit that just keeps coming back, or when we struggle with an illness, or struggle with depression, and so forth. Now, on the one hand, it's appropriate to want healing in those places and growth in those places, so it's not like we don't want to move beyond those things. But if we live our lives continually judging ourselves and disliking parts of ourselves, we're always leaving a certain part of us outside of the church when we come to church. We're leaving a certain part of ourselves in the closet. We're foreign to our own selves. And God is wanting to say, can you also look upon yourself with grace and with openness? Can you also look upon yourself with generosity? Our God is a God who welcomes all of us, no matter who we are, no matter where we're from, no matter what we're dealing with in our lives. Our God welcomes all of us. And so we have Solomon today praying for the outsiders, and God welcoming them into the temple, and Christ bringing them healing power. And we here as beautiful Savior practicing how to do the same, being a community where we know all are welcome, and all are cherished, and all are prized. In Jesus' name. We're going to sing the song, All Are Welcome. Hymn number 641. You'll know